Welcome back to GA Fan TV. My name is Aaron. I'm delighted to be joined here by Jason Keelan from the Loaf of Bread podcast. Big Westmeath fan himself, and I suppose no better week to get a Westmeath man after, I suppose, the weekend that we just had with the Westmeath hurlers, and of course, obviously the Westmeath footballers in action this weekend against Armagh. So, Jason, I'd say, like, has the celebrations died down yet since Westmeath's win against Wexford, or are the celebrations still ongoing, or how's things looking?
Yeah, it's thanks for having me as well, Aaron. Appreciate it. The celebrations, I suppose, took a while to get going because I think a lot of people were just kind of, still waiting to wake up from dream that they thought had happened. I was using the Father Ted Dreams reality board that Dougal had back in the day as my kind of, what's going on. Yeah, good week for Westmeath man to be on. I don't fancy I'll be coming back on next week to talk about another Westmeath victory, sadly. Much as I'd love to, but I can only see this weekend sadly going one way. But I've had so many debates with people about is this a reward for Westmeath really win the Tailteann Cup and been stuck in with this? Yeah, it's great to play the big teams, but realistically, we are the whipping boys of this group. And people, could be very optimistic. I'm very much realist where I'm looking at Armagh, Galway, Tyrone, and I'm just thinking, like, where's any result coming in this? But sure, look, it is what it is. See what Armagh brings.
Yeah, I suppose, like, because I've seen David Brady was obviously talking there on off the ball last week, and he was saying, like, Westmeath could be Armagh or Tyrone, which was definitely a surprising enough comment. Like, I don't know if he has anything against Armagh or Tyrone, but like, I feel like last year, maybe after you win in the Tailteann Cup, I think it wouldn't have been the most sort of inconceivable thing to see happen. But I suppose after the year that you have had, obviously in Division 3, and then like Armagh and Tyrone have been inconsistent at the best of times this year, but they're still Division 1 side, so it probably was quite a over-the-top statement maybe in some ways.
Yeah, been to live shows that David Brady's been at as well, and he does like the odd throwaway comment, we'll call it, I suppose. Maybe
Yeah,
he thought about it again now. He'd probably kind of rethink it and go, "Hang on, what did I just say there?" But yeah, look, it's not been great really for us. I know Desi's in his first managerial role. Positive sides, he's unearthed the likes of Sen and Baker and a few others who, for us down here, top quality footballer. But at the same time, a huge missed opportunity not getting out of the division. And it wasn't even close in many ways. Like, yeah, we threw it away against Down. For Mana, anyone who was in Ederney that day would have said that to lose by the small margin we did, we should have been beaten at half time. Game should have been over. Yeah, what wasn't a great campaign at all. And yeah, I know we racked up a couple of decent scores, but overall, we lost all the games in Ulster by a combined 6 points, which sounds, pretty impressive. But at the same time, we were out with them. We were very, very fortunate to still be that close in any of the games, and we should have beaten Down. Like, that's a given. But it just, we're not a top tier team realistically at the moment.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get on to that game maybe a little bit later, and obviously some of the other games as well. But I suppose we'll start with the game obviously in Croke Park on Sunday. Dublin going up against Roscommon. I suppose a big game obviously for both. I mean, it's interesting. Like, I've been speaking to a few Dublin fans and even speaking to a few neutrals, and a lot of people seem to be just completely dismissing Roscommon, which I find interesting. Like, especially when you look at like Dublin throughout the league in Division 2. Like, at the best of times, I thought they were very sloppy, and that's coming from a Dublin fan. Like, against Clare, I thought we were sloppy. Cork, we could have got bet. Kildare a couple of weeks ago, we nearly could have got bet. And Roscommon, everyone's ranting and raving about Mayo, but Roscommon were the ones who actually beat them in Connacht. So, like, although Dublin will go in as favourites, Roscommon definitely have a chance.
Yeah, I suppose depends what I'd say. Davy Burke will go. I don't think he'll change too much. When he was on the podcast, and I was at a wedding with him before as well, he's a very straight-laced man. What he says is what he's going to do, and he doesn't, they were chatting during the week, I think on Off the Ball or whatever, saying, every GA manager they interview is now lying to your face now that the championship is actually on. But I think he's the one guy who, if he says that he's going to do a high press, he'd do a high press, or if he's going to play two sweepers, he'll play two sweepers. So I don't think he'll change tactics at all, even if it is in the wide open space at Croke Park. And yeah, it's not a familiar ground for Roscommon really over the years, and generally hasn't been, anytime they have been up there, it hasn't been very, nice in many ways. But he brings a lot of experience. Like, he was with the Dublin ladies team for quite a while. He's managed in Dublin. He's managed obviously club sides in Kildare with Confi and stuff like that as well. So it's not an unknown territory to him. It's just whether he can get that across to his Roscommon lads. Now the other side is Dublin should batter them, like, on paper, really, because they have a stronger panel. They can bring lads off the bench. They have Cluxton, which I think is, you can't put a price on having a lad with that much experience and that much ability playing, in front of the back line, just behind them, sorting everything out. And I think just experience alone should win it for Dublin. I'd like to see Roscommon put up a fight, but at the same time, Louth put up a fight, and we saw how that ended. Kildare put up something of a fight, and it didn't go their way. So it's becoming very hard for teams who put up a good fight against Dublin to take anything other than a moral victory at the end of it. And whether that's any use, I don't know. Mightn't be too bad for Davy, given the fact that, 3 teams will get out of the group. He might be looking at this as a shot in the dark. If we get something, God, wouldn't that be unreal? You have to look at Dublin and think, on paper, Croke Park, I think they'll win it comfortably enough in the end. And I hate saying that because I love Davy. He's a legend, but I think Dublin will do it.
Yeah, no, I do agree as well. I think Dublin should be too strong. Even Roscommon's championship record as well. I remember there was a statistic flying around. I think when they got bet by Clare last year, I don't think they've won in Croke Park in the championship in nearly 20 odd years, or going back as far as the 1980s or something like that. So and then you look at it on the flip side, Dublin have only lost 3 championship games in the last 13 years, 12 years. So the odds of Roscommon winning this weekend, when you look at those 2 statistics alone, are quite unlikely, to be honest.
Yeah, and the fact they beat Mayo, everyone had them bigged up. In other people are kind of arguing now and saying could have been the best thing that ever happened to Mayo was going out that early and not having to slog out a provincial championship. And Jesus, saw them against Kerry the other day. That's 5-6 weeks off, did them absolutely no harm whatsoever. Whereas Roscommon have had to slug it out a little bit, and they haven't had as long off. And I don't know if that will do them any favors. I don't really know what the benefit is of, or if there's a better benefit, I should say, of being knocked out early in the provincial or going through it. So it's hard to know. I think, though, that record, as you said, is desperate. And they're not the only county, obviously, whose record is pretty poor in Croke Park. That's, just the way it is for a lot of teams. Dublin forward line should have too much for Roscommon's defensive line, really. Even if some of them aren't shooting at the lights like they have been, there are plenty of them who are, and are, really coming back strong. Paul Mannion, I think having him in there as well just adds another element. He's got the pace. He looks a little bit, stronger. He looks a bit more physical than he would have done. Kilkenny is still, run the show, and now they're bringing, lads through as well. And Shawnee Bugler is absolutely flying. So, and he's, he got man the match the other day, but until then he was kind of just slowly going under the radar, just doing his thing, and now he's exploded onto the scene. So, Dublin bring that talent through all the time. Roscommon had that one underage team years ago that everyone was on about. When these lads come senior, they'll win the All-Ireland. These lads came senior and they did absolutely nothing. So Dublin, just have that steamrolling, academy thing that they just bring through, and it's only going one way, I think, in Croke Park. As much as I'd love to, and with Matt during the week, I was backing underdogs until the cows came home. But I think I'd be a stupid man to back Roscommon here.
Yeah, Gavin says here Super 8s in 2018 and 2019 and the group stages in 2023. Don't know why Roscommon are always with those, but hopefully it will be a much tighter game from Roscommon compared to previous attempts. I definitely think it will be tighter, all right, because I think Roscommon went very toe-to-toe, I remember, with that Dublin team, and that was Dublin Dublin were better than what they are now,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Like in a couple, like in 2018 and 2019, and Roscommon, to be fair, were probably, like, I know they'd won a Connacht title in 2019, but they were probably a bit more of an up and coming side. In some ways, Shawnee says Rossies have no chance against the Dubs. The Dubs are hitting form at the right time and could win by 15 or more. I mean, that would be a big margin. I definitely wouldn't go as far as along as that. But what do you reckon in terms of a margin of victory? Like, what would you be thinking?
Yeah, it's probably in some ways what Shawnee said there is probably likely, because it's that last 10 minutes when teams are completely leggy from having to run on, the massive pitch of Croke Park, spending probably 40, 50 minutes chasing the ball. It doesn't help. And then Dublin certainly put the foot on the throat for the last few minutes. And against Louth, of course, they just went to town. And like they should have scored. They had that 4-on-1. They decided to punch it over the bar in the end. They could have had 10 goals if they wanted. 15 points is probably not an unrealistic thing. I think the handicap is probably, I think it's 7 or 8 or something. It's usually around that for these kind of Dublin games. Trying to remember the Super 8s. I remember where they did go toe to toe in the Super 8s, the same way Westmeath did in that Leinster final a few years back, and we were annihilated. Like, it's unless you can do it toe to toe with Dublin, you're wasting your time trying to learn how to do that in the space of like maybe 2 weeks. We did that to our own detriment. We came out of a Leinster semi-final after playing a fairly decent brand of football, and then decided and turned around and said, let's try and go toe to toe with Dublin and see what happens. And it just went. It couldn't have gone any worse if we tried. Like, it was shocking. I don't think Roscommon should be trying that. Definitely not.
Yeah, like you'd imagine, like Davey will look at, I suppose, the template that his own county probably done against Dublin, and just pack the defence, every man inside the the 45-metre line, 20-metre line, and just try and frustrate Dublin, try and keep them out for as long as possible, and then hit them on the counter attack. Like, it worked quite well against Mayo, but obviously, as you said, like, it's in Croke Park. Dublin have a wealth of options, a wealth of players that they can bring on, and like, I think Mayo were hugely off at that day, in fairness. And like, with the fact that now, like, this is when Dublin need to be coming into their prime, because a few weeks' time, when it's knockout, like, you'll have no more second chances after that. And Desi, I think, very much is playing for his job in some ways here, because I think he's bringing all the older guards back, he's bringing all the the older lads back into the team, and I think the consensus is, if Dublin don't at least make a final anyway, that maybe he might be pushed out the door. But what do you think? Do you think Roscommon might set up a bit defensively, or what you reckon?
I don't know if it depends what Davies' mindset is coming into it. Has he already kind of not written it off, but has he kind of said, look, if we just put in a good performance, don't lose by too much? It doesn't seem like him, though. That's not ever been his mentality. So he could go very, very ballsy and go man to man, which I think I'd love to see. It'd be great for the championship as well. It'd do the game no harm. I had a piece in the newspaper today, the article I to write about prolonging the provincial pain, I call it, and I compared a lot of the games to lads holding on to playing chess but holding on to the pawn for too long and everyone just falling asleep. It could be like that if it's a ultra defensive, put up a blanket of 14 lads and say, come and break us down, it won't be Donegal like whatever was 10 or 12 years ago, but it could be very disheartening for everybody. And I don't think it does Dublin any favours either, because I don't think, realistically, if they're going to get out, when they get out of the group, like, there's no team really who's challenging for the All-Ireland who puts up that blanket defence thing, realistically. Like, they're not putting 14 behind the ball. So saying, it might be great for Dublin to take on a big blanket defence. Even the Ulster teams who, the traditionalists of the blanket defence, even they're not really doing it too much. I know the Ulster final had patches of it where it was very dull and very depressing. But for the most part, if Dublin go into the lead, no team is going to put 14 behind the ball and try and hold out the knockout game. So I think Roscommon should go a little bit more, sort of, not hell for leather, but just a little bit less defensive minded, try and play their own game and see what happens. they have to look at the fact that there's more than Dublin. They have to play other games as well. So there's no point going in with a completely different tactical set and then trying to change it back again for the next game, like Westmeath, as I said, tried to do before, and it just does not work. So, I still, Shawnee's thing of Dublin by 15 or more, I'd go Dublin by double digits. I'd say 10 at the end of it all. They'll kick a few scores near the end just to round it off nicely, I'd say.
Yeah, just a few comments here. Paddy Ban says poor Roscommon won't be able to keep the ball kicked out to them. Yeah, that's the thing. And that's what Louth struggled with as well. I think Dublin turned over Louth like maybe 8 or 9 times in a row. Gavin says, to be fair, I think Roscommon's defence has improved under Dave. Stack, for example, did a good job keeping Shane Walsh quiet the last day, so it shouldn't be a bloodbath. Yeah, like I'm going to go for, I think, a 7-point win. It could be more, could be less, but again, I'd be very shocked if it's anything other than a Dublin win.
Stack did well on the Shane Walsh thing. Shane Walsh, I thought, was quite cold that day. Didn't look like a fella who was getting going at all. Plus, Galway now have Finnerty and so many others who are chipping in scores. Like, it's not a one-man band anymore like it was. There's such a mix of pace and power with Comer, etc. as well. So, yeah, I could say that. I did say to Matt during the week, I said, Kerry will hammer Mayo with that inexperienced Mayo defensive line who've not played against big lads like this before, and that turned out really well.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. Like, especially with Roscommon, like, I mean, or with Galway, like, as you said, like, there's lots of new players coming into the side, and it probably in some ways takes the attention away from Shane Walsh, in fairness. But I suppose another game from the group stage is Derry against Monaghan. A game we've obviously already seen before in the championship. Probably a little bit annoying that we're seeing a repeat pairing. Yeah. Like, Monaghan's last game was against Derry, and Derry have only played one more game in the time that they played Monaghan. So you nearly wonder, should teams have been kept apart? But then at the same time, it's probably hard to sort of facilitate that at the same time. But I suppose Derry have had Monaghan's number in the last couple of years. Like, beat them this year, beat them last year, obviously, as well. But one thing I've learned about Monaghan is that you cannot bet against them. And, like, anytime they're going in under the radar, it's usually a dangerous sign from a Monaghan perspective.
Yeah. It's they're the kind of team, there's a little bit of a Donegal about them kind of in this group, that people have kind of just automatically ignored them and just said, right, look, they'll be bet by everybody and good luck. But on the day, like, they are a strong Ulster team. They compete against, provincially, they compete against, the most competitive one technically in football. So could they pull the rabbit out of the hat? Who knows? I think Derry just have too much and are playing for too much. They're no longer trying to fight their way out of a core group of teams, trying to get out of it. They're out of it now. They're in with the top teams. Conor Glass is, one of the most influential players in the country. And it's very hard to think that it's anything other than a convincing enough Derry win. Forwards wise, they should have way too much for Monaghan. Even though the Monaghan defence, to be fair to them, are very, touch tight men. They're to be, tugging jerseys and pinching and do whatever else they have to do. But at the same time, I don't think it'll have any bearing really on the result. I can only see Derry taking the win here. Where is it on actually? Is it a home game for Derry, or
I actually don't know
where it's on? Yeah.
I was just trying to check that there. Actually, I think it is at home. Yeah, I think it's in Celtic Park.
Yeah, like they'd be fairly content playing at home, I think, against them. And yeah, it is. It's really frustrating that this is a game that we only saw not that long ago, and like there is something probably to be said for keeping a separation, like in the Champions League. If you have, or whatever it is, we've met a team, or you get moved, or qualifiers, you get moved into a different group, or like they wouldn't put Russia and Ukraine the same group because of the war, like that kind of thing. I know there's no Derry Monaghan war, but at the same time, there should be a way to find, like, it's a rarity that it's going to happen. Like, realistically, there's very low odds of it, but it did happen, and there probably should have been something to learn from. There probably should be some kind of note to say, if these two teams come out, move the other one into this pot. It's not that hard. Plus, it adds a bit of excitement to it as well. Knowing that you think you've avoided someone, next thing they throw a spanner in the works and throw them into your group. So but it has to be a Derry win, and I don't think it's a double-digit win or anything like that. It's convincing, but convincing like 5 or 6, convincing, as in a bit of a Galway against Tyrone, a kind of a second-gear stroll, and Monaghan trying, but not trying hard enough. I think is probably the way I see it, but you might think different.
Yeah, it's a hard one to know, to be honest with you. I do have a sneaky feeling about Monaghan just because Derry put so much into the Ulster Championship, and I think they went hell for leather in the league as well. But I think like one thing we know, I know Derry's manager has obviously changed, and Kieran Meena is now taking charge until the end of the season. But like I don't think Derry's style or the way they play or anything's going to change. I think one thing we know about Derry is we know how they're going to play. Like they're going to bring the energy. They're going to bring that like sort of Derry intensity that we've always seen. Whereas with Monaghan, like they have been at like if you catch them on a good day, they're very very good. But at times they can be quite flat. Like they were quite flat against Derry, against Tyrone. They were flat in the first half and then pulled it back brilliantly in the second half. And then through the league, there was times where they put up a big win, big performance, and then follow it up with a not so good performance. Whereas I think Derry's sort of trajectory is more straight, whereas Monaghan's is up and down. And I think that's why you'd probably edge towards Derry, because I think you know what you're going to get with them, in fairness.
Yeah, and I think you know what you're going to get from back to front as well, like all the way from Lynch and goals, like, and then you've the likes of Chrissy McCaig standing in front, who is one of the most underrated defenders, I think, in the GAA. Like, just he's very under the radar in many ways, even though he is that talismanic figure, but just does things very kind of unassumingly, and then all the way up to the forward line. I don't think Derry did him. I don't think Kieran Meena did them. Won them any fans, with the Kieran McFall comments after the penalty shootout and all that. Like, it doesn't help. It's already bad enough as it is without him throwing that in as well. And I think the neutral will be kind of torn between, do I cheer for Derry to try and see another interest in running the All Ireland, or do I cheer for Monaghan because Derry are just unlikable these days. So because of what's going on essentially off the pitch as well, but Monaghan, yeah, as you said, 1 minute they could be amazing, the next minute they could be beaten by. I won't pick a county because I've already insulted counties this week several times. So, but they could be beaten by a less strong county, we'll say. I just don't see anything except a Derry win, though. Really, even with all the energy expelled and Ulster and having to go through the penalty shootout and all that kind of crack, I think in some ways the penalty shootout does no harm for a bit of a boost as well. The fact that you won it and you slogged your way through it and win back to back, then of course, which they haven't done either. When the Anglo-Celt, it's great for them. But I can't see it going any other way. Like as good as Monaghan are, to be fair, I do like them. They have always been an entertaining team, even though they've lost a lot of the big names of recent times. But they still have enough of a threat there, and they will come back good again. They'll bring the young lads through like they always do, and they'll turn into great players. But like it's a Derry win by 5 or 6. I'm gonna say 5, just to be exact, I suppose.
Yeah, just running through some comments here. Jamie says we have to do better against Derry this time. I think we can only improve on our last day out. If we could pull off a win here, I think we would. The group. I think this will decide who tops it. This user says Derry, in my opinion, will likely topple the group, but you can never rule out Monaghan to come back from the dead to make it a draw or take the win. It's an interesting point there. Shawnee says I'd fancy Monaghan this time around. Gallagher was integral to Derry's success, and John says Derry should win, but then with Monaghan on their day might cause an upset. Yeah, like I mean, I suppose like going back to one of the comments there, like it is probably the winner. You'd imagine probably will top the group, and that's why like because I feel like with a lot of these group stage games, like even with the Galway Tyrone game and the Kerry Mayo game to a certain extent, there's not a huge amount of jeopardy if you lose. Like it's probably just gonna take you longer to get to a quarter final, because you'll have to play an extra game, and then you might maybe be unseeded going into the quarter final, so you might get a Dublin or maybe a Mayo now with the fact that Kerry are probably likely to finish second. Yeah. But yeah, like I suppose it's big win. Like, and I mean, if Monaghan can pull it off, like that'd be some story.
Ought to be unreal if they could. the comment there about Gallagher being integral to Derry's success. Like, I would bet a lot of money that he's not too far away from what's going on. Like, I'm sure on
Mm,
paper and physically he's not present. I'm sure he's still. I don't think he walked. I don't think he walked entirely away that quick. I'm sure a WhatsApp
yeah,
isn't ever far away. So while it might not be the spitting on the hands on the sideline, shouting all the time, it's there's something. He's still there. Like, so you can't say. I don't think you can say that it's just Kieran Meena who's there by himself. He's may as well have, the what was it Martin Johnson had in the rugby that time, the microphone and the water bottle. He may as well have one of them, like, just with Gallagher on the other end, because I'd say he's pretty much there in spirit in many ways. So, um, like, I know a lot of people there saying Monaghan could pull a draw or a win in Celtic Park. I think it's optimistic. I think that's maybe more hopeful for a strong competitive game as opposed to what the reality could be, which is Derry just physically too strong, forwards too sharp, defense too touch tight. Um, I still only see it going one way. As much as I want to agree with some of the commenters there, I think it's only going one way in my eyes. So
mm. Yeah, like I'd agree as well. Like I think Derry will win. I think it will be. I think there will be moments where I think it'll be closer than the last game. I think it might be only 3 or 4 points. But I do think the Derry will just outmuscle Monaghan, and I just can't see Monaghan sticking with the same pace that Derry bring for the full 70 minutes. And then as well, like I think, going into the final 10 minutes, I think attention for Monaghan then might turn towards Clare the next day out, and obviously Donegal as well. Like losing here is not the end of the world from a Monaghan perspective. So, yeah, you're saying Derry by 5 or 6.
yeah, I think Derry 5 or 6. Yeah, I don't know the thing about finishing. Is there much jeopardy if you're beaten or whatever? The arguments going on over that. I've been reading a few about, why when you knocking 4 teams out versus we're getting more games played because of it. So yeah, I can see where that argument goes. I still think they'll both want to get something from it. They wouldn't want to won't go in like, being the underdogs and think, look, if we get rolled over here, we'll just look to the next one. Like, the benefit of winning one, you're through essentially. So
Mm.
it's worth their while to come out and give it the full rattle for 70 minutes and see what happens. You never know, but I'll stick with Derry by 5, a comfortable 5, I'll say.
Yeah, I think I'll go Derry by 3 or 4 points. Oren says here was at the Derry training the other
All
day.
right.
He's gone. Well, to be fair, I don't think he'd be silly enough to
No,
show up to the
physically,
training.
no.
No,
Yeah,
like someone would take a photo of that. There'd be a video. Obviously, there was
yeah.
videos going after the Ulster final, whether they were true or not, or old videos. I don't know. Like obviously, you don't know the ins and outs. But yeah, like obviously, only he knows. Only Derry people know. Like we're just obviously speculating.
That
But
man
there
is
you go.
dedicated. Give that man some sort of badge for going to a training session. That is dedication. Good man, Oren.
Yeah, dedication right there. Definitely ran through the mill, I'm sure. But I suppose the other game, or one of the other games, Armagh versus Westmeath. Obviously, your own county, Westmeath. I mean, as we were saying at the top of the show, there, like, is there much of a chance here? Is there any chance? Like, not many people would have given maybe they'll take a bit of inspiration from what the hurlers done against Wexford. But again, it's very unlikely. I think I'm clutching at straws here, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd love to be. I'd love to be more optimistic. We very, very. I should have brought this downstairs on the paper. The list of previous meetings between us. It doesn't generally make for good view, and I think there's the odd good result in there somewhere. But like, it's a team who've come through playing the strong teams in Ulster, going all the way to extra time and penalties in an Ulster final versus a team who were 8 points up against Louth and who I sent a message to a lot of people and said, we have not won this game at all. And of course, we went and did Westmeath 2.0 like we did against Down in the league and threw it away. And that, in many ways, is kind of what I'd be most afraid of, that even if we did go into a lead, we have that kind of almost stigma now of, well, we don't know what to do now. What do we do when we're winning? It's almost like, been at the last 100 yards of a race and then stopping and going, am I meant to cross this line or do I go back, and start again kind of? And that's what we've done 3-4 times since January that I can think of offhand. Imagine a good start for us. Like, it'll be brilliant. John Heston kicks a few, Ronan O'Toole's, run the show at the pitch. Defence are on song. They've got, O'Neill, etc., Turbot. They've got them all under wraps. They go 5 or 6 ahead. The shock's on the cards. It's terrible to say, but I put my money on us to lose by 6 or 7, regardless if it was 10 minutes or 20 minutes left. We just were not, mentally we're not there in terms of being in the lead, like in games. Like the lads, there's no problem with fitness, right? And like I saw a few of the lads in town even today. They look like they're fairly sharp. They were fairly buoyed up. Like there's no issue there. It's literally just bad selection of passes at the wrong moment, looking to try and put off something outrageous when a simple pass and just even holding the ball for a little bit longer and just giving lads a bit of energy back. But we just have this, I don't know what it is. It's a mental block in some ways, I think, that's there. And I don't know where that's come from because we didn't have it last year near the Tailteann Cup. When we were, chips were down, we were there and we pulled it out of the fire, especially against Cavan. Like, I would have fancied Cavan to go on and win that one, but we did very well that day. Armagh have bigger objectives than Westmeath, sadly. They will see this as, they won't, the hurling might be great for the footballers to look at, but I'd say Armagh saw that result as well. If the lads have any kind of social media, will think we better not do that in the football, because you go a bit ahead and then suddenly, I know it's a lot harder in football to get those long balls, that we did in the hurling, just drive them in, but they won't want to do that. If they're going ahead, they're staying ahead. And if we're going ahead, we're not staying ahead, put it that way.
It's interesting already with Westmeath, because I remember like when you won the Tailteann Cup last year, I think, and then obviously a couple of months later, the Leinster Championship draws come out and everything else. You're thinking it's shaping up to be maybe a very good year for Westmeath. Like, you're on the so-called easier side of the draw that obviously avoids Dublin, no Kildare on that side of the draw as well. Obviously, Louth and Meath have probably dropped off a good bit this year, but Louth have, kind of really taken that extra step forward and probably better than what many people would have anticipated at the start of the year. But like, obviously you've had Jack Cooney, who stepped away, and you've obviously had Desi Dolan, who's come in as manager. Like, I mean, like, what do you think it's kind of went wrong? Because as we were saying, like, I remember some of those players, like Ronan O'Toole, I remember was phenomenal. John Heslin, Sam McCartan, Ray Cannell, like so many brilliant footballers. But like, from a Westmeath perspective, it's been a very quiet year. Like, I think from Westmeath, just haven't really heard much. And the only times I have heard from Westmeath is usually when, unfortunately, there's been a disappointing defeat.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, Desi's a very, very different. I know he's behind the scenes. He was obviously in the staff with Jack last year, but he's a very different kind of person. Even on the sideline, like Jack would be, you'd feel like the instructions were kind of given out, and Jack was just there just to kind of reinforce it. Whereas, like, I covered a couple of the league games, covered the O'Byrne Cup match out in the Downs, my old club here at the road, and I don't know, it just didn't feel, I know it's very early days, obviously, but it just didn't feel the same. You kind of had John Keane, obviously Desi's, old teammate or former All-Star, like, and he seemed to be sort of giving instructions to one, Desi's giving instructions to another, and they didn't always fully coordinate with each other. I know we used the league as well to try and get a few lads through, like, and some lovely footballers coming through in Westmeath as well, and it will come good eventually. It mightn't come good to the level of any kind of silverware like the Tailteann Cup or anything, but it was very downbeat after the league. The fact that we knew we couldn't get out of it, and that was the goal, I think, for the year, was to do that. And then the next goal, of course, was get past Mickey Hart and get past Louth, and that, it's kind of testament, I suppose, to where things are, that even though we were, I think, 6 or 7 ahead against Louth, that the messages going around the different WhatsApp groups that I was on were generally the same, which is playing well, but this is a long way from over. And that came from the Down game, the Fermanagh game, a couple of other games in between that where we weren't exactly great either. I would give Desi time though. I don't think the county board, I think Frank Meskel or any of them are foolish enough to think that a loss to Louth and 3 defeats if they come in the group, it's a bad first season, but it's a longer term project. Same thing that Colin O'Rourke said he's doing at Meath. He's looking to the next 2-3 years. I think Desi is doing the same. That's why Senna Baker got taken off the under-20s basically and brought up to the seniors, and same with a few others. So I think it's just a case of give us a little bit of time, hopefully, and things will come good. There is signs there; it is coming good. It's a little bit slower, I think, than people were hoping for, especially after last season. But we'll get there eventually. It won't be this weekend though.
Yeah. John says here, I just joined the chat. Excellent insight as usual. Thanks. Yeah, appreciate the
cheers, man.
support. He also says, unfortunately, Westmeath will need a miracle. Sorry to say. And Jamie says, I think the games Westmeath will have in this group could benefit them going forward, possibly. But I could see it being a difficult few weeks for them. But they should go full tilt to see how they fare. Yeah, I suppose from an Armagh perspective, especially after the disappointment from losing that penalty shootout to Derry, in some ways it's almost it's a brilliant game for them to have, because they can really go after Westmeath, put them on the back foot, try and build up some confidence. If it goes wrong, then it has the potential to go the complete opposite way. But from an Armagh perspective, I think they'd much rather play Westmeath now rather than Tyrone first. Do you know what I mean? Just to get that win, to put confidence back in the minds and everything else.
Yeah, someone said there would be a miracle if you won. Miracles are reserved for the religious, as they say, and unfortunately, I'm not one of them. So, the other thing about the game's been potentially good for Westmeath. Some counties, I think that's very much true for that. Defeats aren't the worst thing in the world, and you always learn something from it. I don't know if traditionally, if we do a whole lot better after a defeat. I don't know if things change dramatically, or if we take. I don't think Desi is kind of same as Joe Fortune, the hurling. He was very much against anything to do with moral victories. When Paul, who works in the newspaper here, was chatting to him after, it was straight out, and he said it from the start: no moral victories. That's not where we are. If we're going to be doing anything, we need actual results. I think the same has to apply to the footballers, even though different standards, different teams, whatever. But I don't think we can be going through Armagh, Tyrone, Galway, taking 3 moral victories out of it. Like the hurlers happened, they got slaughtered by Galway. There's no moral victory out of getting murdered like that. Same way, I don't think Louth would have taken massive amounts really from the Leinster final against Dublin. They would have taken bits and pieces. But then going back to your bit about a good one for Armagh, definitely, yeah. I think Galway, Tyrone, Armagh, before the fixtures were done, I think would have been, fingers crossed, give us Westmeath first, home or away, neutral venue, doesn't matter. No, we'll get that win. They have to be realistic and look at it and go, we'll get that win, we'll be true, and then we can go from there and see how things pan out. So, it makes things interesting now, the fact that Kerry lost. I don't think, teams might be rethinking about whether they want to meet Kerry, possibly in a preliminary game. But yeah, you have to fancy O'Neill, etc. They're on form. They're a good team to watch. A lot of people I know have very, definite dislikes for Armagh for a number of reasons, ranging from McGeeney but I like the way they play. There's something interesting about them, and I think Rian O'Neill's a great footballer. I've had terrible arguments with my brother over, All Stars last year and all that kind of thing with him. But it's, what did I say at the start? Armagh by 7. Armagh by 7, and I'd love to say Westmeath might get someone out of it, and they could run them close. But I definitely think it's Armagh win, nothing else there.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think Armagh will be too strong. I think 7 or 8 points, I think, is probably what I'd go with. If it had been a year ago, I know Armagh were probably actually looking better maybe a year ago as well, but maybe you might say that the gap might be a bit smaller, but I think right now, you definitely have to go for a 7 or 8 point victory for Armagh.
We got the wrong team in Leinster. That was our problem. Anyone except Louth. Mickey Hart just had us nailed
They're on
before it
they're on the
even.
ball.
Yeah, he just knew. Like, I'm taking on a man who I've managed players against, Desi Dolan, and now he's up against me. He's inexperienced. He's obviously nervous enough going into his first game. This is all set up for Mickey Hart to pull something out of the bag, and he did. I would have rather taken on Kildare. I would have taken Kildare any day of the week, because they were so up and down. They could turn up for
Yeah.
20 minutes and die for the rest of the game, and that would have suited us fine. Whereas Louth just slowly built into it, and it was a very slow start, but you could just sense that they were just building. I just think it was the wrong team on the wrong day for us to get. Anyone else would have done. I would have taken Meath. I would have taken on Meath that day. For anyone except Louth. Obviously, Dublin would go away from me, like, but Louth was just the wrong team to get that day, unfortunately for us. So we don't want to see them anymore. Fed up playing Louth in the championship. We end up playing them every second year, I think, at this stage. I feel like the only team I know I'd play against is Louth. So
and I suppose another thing that we'll have to get used to playing them is obviously Cork. And Cork did play Louth actually last year as well. In the championship, I think in the qualifiers, I think just before the All Ireland Cork finals. I think Cork won that day, but Louth did beat Cork earlier this season in the league. It's an interesting one. This one, like, definitely, probably, maybe, like, I suppose Louth might be slight favourites, but it's mad to think that because, like, again, just a year ago, Cork would have been very heavy favourites for this. And I feel like Cork probably do have the better players, but I think Louth are just better run, and they have the better manager in Mickey Hart, who just knows how to navigate his way through these games. But what's your thinking ahead of this one?
Yeah, it's I presume Louth are first. I think it's on in Louth, I presume, or Darver,
It's
wherever it
actually,
is.
it's actually on in Park
Is it neutral, is
Township.
it?
So actually,
Oh, it is. Yeah.
It's
Louth
because I think
to be used to that.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be Louth's home game, but because RD
Hmm.
isn't big enough, so that's the reason why they're having it in Navan.
Yeah, Louth they wouldn't be unfamiliar with Partalchin, like, so it's not the worst venue really to stick them in. It's not like Kildare going down to Nolan Park or whatever. Like, it's not that mental. So on paper, as you said, Cork should have the stronger players, but they're coming up against one of the most informed kind of teams, one of the most surprise package teams I think we've had in a while. And while, yeah, they got a slaughter, and a Mickey Hart said it straight out, battered in Croke Park in that final. The fact they got there was that semi-final was probably their Leinster final in reality. And now they're thinking, okay, Dublin's written off, just forget about that one. Let's go back to where we were. And Sammy Mulroy, fantastic player. He's never going to get the credit he deserves just because of the county he plays with. And that's just the nature of, many of us in the lesser strong counties. So it's a hard one to call now that I'm tossing it up in my head here and just trying to think, where do you put Cork down in Park? Put Cork up in Park Talchin and think that they do well. Talchin is a nice pitch. It's narrower than Park Equive. Louth. Now they're used to the narrow pitches. Like, I've been up in Darver a good few times and they've played challenge games and stuff there. I think I'm going to go for Louth. I'm going to go for Louth by like 3 points, and just to annoy Matt as well a little bit.
Yeah. Although I think he'd probably nearly agree with you. To be fair, I think he's nearly been more critical of Cork than anyone else has. In fairness, but yeah, like, I think I'd agree with you, like, as well. Though I think this is almost like in some ways similar to Derry Monaghan, where you know what Louth are going to do, you know what they're going to bring. Whereas Cork again are just such a I'd say Matthew just get really annoyed watching Cork a lot of the time. I think most Cork fans probably do, because, like, they play Dublin, they look brilliant, they look fantastic, and then a few weeks later they go out and lose to Louth, and then even towards the end of the league campaign, I think they were 8 points down against Derry and dragged it back to a draw. The defeat to Meath on the opening day. You just don't know what you're going to get with Cork. It seems like when Cork are playing teams of a higher standard, they raise their game, they sort of bring energy. Whereas when they're playing teams that they're expected to beat, or teams similar to their level, they just completely drop, and there's just a completely flop style performance. So yeah, I'd agree. I'd fancy Louth by the smallest margins, I think.
Yeah, and that's exactly true what you said about, like, think of the COVID Munster final. Like, And I think that is another kind of just come to me as well. Like Louth are going to pack out Partalchin with their fans because for
Yeah.
them this is uncharted territory. This is like Disneyland for Louth fans, getting into this. And the fact Mickey Hart is there, there's great enthusiasm. The energy is up in the county. Cork kind of coming in. No one really knows what to make of them because they're as you said, like Monaghan. 1 minute they could be class, 1 minute they could be absolutely useless. And the crowd loud crowd, are boisterous. Like they'll get on the backs of the Cork lads and they'll rattle them a little bit. And Cork won't like it. Like it's not going to play in their favour as long as Louth stay in the game early days. They don't want another start like they had against Westmeath because they mightn't pull that one out of the bag as easily. Cork have enough experience in games like that to try and do it. But I think Louth by a couple of points could be the story of the weekend if they won and they're through out of the group. Like that would be ridiculous for them. But it's certainly a possibility. There, I won't say I won't put them as favourites. I put them at 50-50, the two teams, because you can't rule out Cork's experience, even though it's different, a lot of different lads playing. But yeah, I'll stick with Louth by 2. I made some desperate predictions during the week with Matthew, but I did predict Sligo win against Kildare. I was so close to that. But yeah, I'll go Louth by 2. So
Yeah, I'd agree as well. I think Louth by a point, maybe Louth by 2 as well. Like, and I agree with what you said there in terms of all the fans coming up. Like I was in Croke Park for the Leinster final, and to be honest with you, I think there was more Louth fans than Dublin fans.
Yeah.
Like I think we were outnumbered. Like I was on the hill, and you were looking left and right, and you just seen red. Like a few pockets of blue here and there, but it was just mostly Louth supporters. So I think they're definitely a football and mad county. Probably more than I actually had thought, especially after seeing them all come to Croke Park. And I'd imagine because like with Cork, like obviously Cork are probably more like it's probably 50-50 in terms of hurling and football. But again, like are all the Cork fans going to travel to Port Halcyon? I don't know. There'd be a good pocket of them, but probably not that many. So I think it will be. You'd probably say 3/4 Louth, if probably even more, to be fair.
I'd say so. Yeah. It's I know Cork though. Like to be fair, any team that isn't in the central area, it's a journey regardless of where you're coming from. Cork, to be fair to them, with family down in Cork, like they do travel. So, but Partalchin as well. You're not filling Park Equive. You're filling a much smaller ground, a much tighter ground. Players close to the action, the fans near the edge of the pitch. Like it's got all the recipe for a cracking game if the crowd is big, which it should be, and if the game is tight early days, it could be the game of the weekend. Like, would we be brave enough to say it could be a draw? Like, would that be the most shout of the weekend if we called it a draw?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I mean, there are a lot of draws nowadays, especially across hurling and football. Like, there tends to be. And especially when you look at the amount of games that have gone to extra time this year as well, the amount of league games that have been draws, like it's definitely not impossible. It's definitely not impossible. And with the fact there's so much on the line here as well, because realistically, are either of these two going to get any points from Mayo or Kerry? I don't think that they are. So like the winner of this game goes through basically as the third place team, you'd imagine. And then they can let the shackles off then for the final two matches. So yeah, like I think it'll be a tense game.
Imagine if you get a Cork defender though who can take Clifford the same way as was it Sam Callan, I think, for Mayo the other day. And imagine if the Cork forwards were doing the same thing the Mayo lads did. Like Kerry were so bad. Like it was actually it was kind of worrying in some ways. I know they've had terrible like last few weeks, obviously with Ellen Clifford passing away and things like that. But like it's still David Clifford was actually the main threat, and he's himself and his brother obviously gone through, and his sister gone through the worst tragedy, and have had to live through it. And yet he was probably the only one, bar Shane Ryan and Coles, who was cracking. He was the only one outfield who turned up. Like, they couldn't be that bad again twice, like really. But there'd be nothing stopping Louth and Cork looking at that and kind of going, "Geez, lads, they're not all they're still brilliant. Obviously, are they all they're cracked up to be this year? Has someone unearthed something, or did Mayo just use those 6 weeks to the most optimum way they could and just came out, just blew them out of the water? So yeah, a draw would be very interesting because it makes the next weekend so equally amazing because there's so much to play for. Then the following day you've got Kerry bottom of the group,
Yeah.
Louth and Cork on a point and Mayo safely through. Yeah, like would you put Kerry at the bottom of the group after the? I don't think anyone would have put Kerry at the bottom of the group at any point in anything in life. Never mind in the the knockout parts or the group parts. So um, both teams. So I think Louth and Cork would love to play an old draw out if they could organise it to play it out that way and just
Yeah.
screenshot the table and just stick it up in the dressing room the next week. But yeah, I'm still going to stick with Louth though. I think someone had a comment up there as well about the crowd in Tailteann as well. I think that could be a factor in it as well. A good crowd really puts the frighteners up the opposition, and it's going to be a long enough trek up for Cork up to Navan. So yeah, let them see how they deal with that when they get there.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think I'll go for Louth by 2 or 3 points. In fairness, there obviously is no Tailteann Cup action this weekend. I think I forgot to take that out of the title, so we'll update that maybe a little bit later on. But in terms of I suppose in terms of Westmeath, the Westmeath hurlers, like I wanted to obviously get your opinion on obviously that win versus Wexford last weekend, and obviously the game against Antrim this week as well, because like it almost felt like Westmeath, I suppose, at half time versus Wexford, you were dead and buried, not just in terms of the game, but possibly in terms of the season, because I know you could have still beat Antrim and then obviously they would have went down, but now like you've given yourselves the best chance possible. You could lose at the weekend and still end up avoiding relegation. So like it's absolutely mad. And I suppose what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm dying to see text Will O'Callaghan after this. I need to text him and ask what the power rankings are because I'm insisting that Westmeath move up the power rankings a little bit. But it was so bizarre in so many ways. Like when you see the list of scorers as minute by minute, Westmeath had two different scorers all the way up to the last, I think, 12 minutes. I think Kieran Doyle did the vast majority, scored Niall O'Brien then as well. And you just thought, well, if they get back into this, all Wexford need to do is just mark those two lads really heavily, and nobody else seems to do it. And then Niall Mitchell comes on, and the lad who was doing a bit of work here in the house, an old teammate, clubmate of Niall's, and exactly what I was saying as well is Niall Mitchell could be the greatest hurler on the planet one day, and the next day mightn't run 10 yards. But when you bring him on, you're guaranteed that he is going to cause chaos. It's like bringing on Donaghy or O'Shea, in football for the last few minutes, just to go in there and just throw a few shapes and just knock a few lads around. And the two long balls that went in that he got the goals from were just like, one was just pure muscle and the other was pure fluke, like that it broke to him behind the defensive line. But we never get any luck. Like, we don't make our own luck usually, and we don't get much luck generally. So to get the break was outrageous. And the lads deserved it. Like, it was the most Route 1 hurling I've ever witnessed in my life, those last 10 minutes, where it was just, once McDonald missed a penalty, Westmeath just kind of thought, we could, tag a few points back on, make this slightly more respectable. And then they just started launching these balls in from their own 45. Like, they were going miles into the air. Like, the lads were just aiming straight up into the air when they were hitting them from defence. And you could just see it was just bodies in the square just piling in. And, you can't buy luck like that at the best of times when you're a county who's fighting off relegation most of the time. So to get the win was absolutely insane. It's probably the greatest result, I would say. It's touching on nearly the greatest result in Westmeath GAA in general. Like, I know 4 for the footballers was phenomenal. That was a different year, different time. The hurlers starved of success generally. Christy Rings have been there, it's been great, but at top level, we're not even in the pond with the fish, never mind, anything else. So it was insane. Wexford in the Joe McDonough, still a possibility. Antrim will fancy their chances against us now on Sunday. They'll go in as slight favourites anyway. They tend to do against us. I still think generally they would overall game by game be slightly better than us. They put in good performances. I think up in Cork and Park they put in a good performance against Dublin. Put in a few good
Yeah.
performances like of note. Like they've never been bar Galway the other day. Obviously, they just trounced on everyone, but they put up good performances against Kilkenny, against Dublin. So yes, Antrim will go in as favourites, but we'll bring them to Monaghan. We'll give them a game here and see what happens. And I have to do the reporting on it, so I'll avoid throwing too many stones at the pitch and Antrim players. I'll have to keep that keep myself quiet for that one. But I still think Westmeath could nick a win. We did that against Wexford with 14 men, 10 minutes left, missing the two greatest players probably Westmeath have had, Angus Clark and Killian Doyle, the two best players we've had, bar Tommy Doyle probably in the last how long. And it defied all logic in terms of hurling and GAA. So the fact we did it is great. And it'll be forever remembered. It would be lovely now if we kicked on a little bit, even just nick something against Antrim on Sunday, even if it's an unconvincing draw, an unconvincing win, it would be lovely. And it would it would save Wexford, I know, as well, which I do like the idea, because I work with a few Wexford people. I do like the idea of Wexford just been tipped out of the top tier just to see, how they suffered out of Joe McDonough. It might make people change their mind about second tier competitions, when they see one of their greats, put into the Grand National for only runs of hurling. So it might make people change their mind a little bit. But yeah, great day and many more to come, hopefully.
Yeah, because I'd imagine even for the game this weekend, like there'll probably be a bit of a carnival atmosphere. I'd imagine as well. Like, and the players will probably get roared coming onto the pitch, and there'll be a real feel good factor. Like, I'd imagine the confidence, for the opening 10, 15 minutes. Like I'd imagine the lads will be flying now. If Antrim start well and dish out a few early blows, then maybe that's when the confidence might wane ever so slightly. But like definitely with the fans and everything else, like you'd imagine the players would be walking out feeling 10 foot tall, especially after what they done last week.
Yeah, it's funny actually you say that, because my cousin, she won. I was doing the commentary for the ladies' minor finals there last week, and my cousin played in the Westmeath when they beat Offaly, and they were presented at the next ladies' game at half time, the Westmeath Wexford senior game on Saturday. And one of my mates turned to me, or one of my mates texted me then after the hurl, who was there with me at that game, and said, "Should we get the Westmeath lads at half time to be presented to the crowd, for beating Wexford?" Like, it's that big a deal here. Like, people who may not know, like, diehard Westmeath hurling fans, there's so many of them here, and lads who know different to any Galway, Kilkenny, will give their life for hurling and get no rewards out of it. And that essentially was, for many of them, winning Liam McCarthy, because it's a surreal moment, and to do it in the manner they did, like, completely defied logic. I don't think Matthew has come up with a stat yet to prove that it's not the greatest, biggest turnaround in hurling history in the championship. I haven't seen anyone. Yeah, I haven't seen anyone. I know those league wins that have been slightly turned around, bigger turnarounds, but carnival atmosphere. I expect Cusack Park to be pretty full, or at least the stand side full anyway, which it nearly is for the hurling game. So, and the cameras are going to be there, and it's going to be big for them, and they're going to be under the spotlight now to see if they can follow it up. And it's new territory for them, and that's where, going back to Joe Fortune saying we don't want moral victories, I see why he doesn't want them, because we're used to taking moral victories and trying to build on them, and most of the time not building on them and getting slaughtered worse the next day. But now we have an actual victory to go by. It could be a turning point in Westmeath hurling. It's not going to turn us into Galway or Kilkenny overnight, or Limerick or whoever, but it's there. That will forever be in the records to say Westmeath Miracle. Yes, that's exactly the title you should have gone for. Good. It's there, and it can't ever be taken away. Like, it should be. I know this sounds, one game, and it sounds like, God, like, how bad are Westmeath? But it's not that. We should frame the photos from that and put them. There's plenty of pictures in the tunnel in Cusack Park going into dressing rooms. It should be stuck up beside them. Like, it is that big for us, and it could be life changing. It could be hurling changing for Westmeath going forward. And it's just amazing. I still haven't quite got over it. Like, genuinely, when the lads were texting me, these WhatsApp groups were hopping, going, "Are you watching? Are you watching?" I was going, "Watching what? Like, we're being murdered." And it just turned around. I don't think it'll happen again in the distant future. I don't think you'll ever see a turnaround like that. And between a perceived minnow team in some ways and a team that's was challenging for the All Ireland, semi-final not that long ago. So
Yeah.
is that someone say bizarre? Is that the, yeah? I think that's the word I would use as well. I can't think of any other word to describe it. Insanity. It was the definition of insanity for Westmeath. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results each time, but it actually worked. We were doing the same thing for most of that game, and it didn't work, and then suddenly it just started to work. So, it takes something miraculous, and that was our miracle. That was our miracle at Medina was the Ryder Cup. We'll take like the miracle in Wexford or the Chadwick's Park, whatever it is down there. So, we'll take another one on Sunday now as well. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
And you reckon? What do you reckon then? Will he beat Antrim? Nick it maybe?
I'm going to say we will. I think frees have become so crucial for weaker teams. I'm going to call them weaker teams. I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but I think for us it becomes so crucial. Like, Killian Doyle would knock over 10, 11, 12 frees a game generally. Even in the slaughterings, he'd still knock them over. And it's become a big thing for us to be able to have a good free taker to keep us in games, even if we are behind. And I can see us getting a lot of frees. We'd be quite physical. We win a lot of frees in games. We tend to win an awful lot compared to other teams that I've noticed. So I think we could sneak it, and it could come down to a free on the sideline near the stand, last puck of the game, and we could sneak it that way. And I'd take that all day long. I think it would be even better than winning by 5 or 6. Funnily enough, just to win it in such drama like we did the last day, to do it again would just boost the energy even further. But I'll go with us by 1. The barest of victories, but I'll take it.
Yeah. Like I fancy is as well. Like, I think it might even be a draw. Maybe might nick it by 1 or 2 points. I just
The
think,
miracle of Mullingar, we'll call it.
Yeah. Who knows? There might have to be a statue maybe outside Cusack Park or something of some nature. Really, if you do go and pull it off. But yeah, no, I fancy about 1 or 2 points. Like, I just think, to be honest, I haven't seen enough probably of Westmeath or Antrim to really give an actual accurate prediction. But like, I just think that, like, if you, like, after doing that against Wexford, like surely, like, the buzz and the excitement amongst the players, and I just think they'll start that bit better, in my opinion. But there we go. I suppose
the headline writes itself as well, doesn't it? Joe Fortune. The headline is writing itself already.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, like, I think, like, and I think as well, like, I think Antrim have nearly put probably more at times in, because, like, they put like good displays against Dublin. They put up huge, they fought really tooth and nail against Wexford. I felt like Westmeath are almost saving themselves for these 2 crucial games because of the fact that they almost meant more in some ways. Like,
Probably true. Yeah. Like, as I said, when the paper messaged me before the Wexford game, the message essentially said, "Barring some kind of miracle here, will you do the relegation game next week?" And at halftime of the Wexford game, I was debating what way I write this relegation article. So I'd already started coming up with ideas for the article before the Wexford game had thrown in. So, and my mind, I was kind of going, that was nearly one of my things, was Westmeath would have targeted this game the same way Antrim would have, as the one to win, and not ignoring all the rest, but just accepting the rest are probably not going to go your way, and take whatever you can from it, which, as I said, Joe Fortune hates doing, but, it's where we are. And then it just, in the space of 12 minutes, it just turned it and said, was it 3-5, I think, in the last 9 minutes we scored? Like, we struggle to score 3-5 in a lot of games, like, never mind the last 9-10 minutes of a game, there were 16 points behind, and it's great. But yeah, Antrim will definitely have looked at this before all the fixtures as the same way that we looked at it, and they're probably still looking at it the same way. They do look at it as, we need to win this one, just to make sure, because if they win it, and realistically Wexford will probably lose their other game, they're gone. It's a bizarre state of affairs. But it's in some ways it's great for hurling. Sometimes it takes the best of all. Sometimes to make things more interesting. So we'll see what happens on Sunday. I wouldn't begrudge Antrim the victory just to see what would happen next year with Wexford in the Joe McDonagh, and just to see how far have they actually fallen, or was it just a terrible season and a terrible blip that if they come out next year and they got relegated to Joe McDonagh, they come out next year and they walls through it, then fair enough, you go, okay, bad season, Derry Egan just made a mess of something, players just dropped the ball. But imagine if they went into Joe McDonagh and struggled, like that would be, for hurling, it wouldn't be great, but for spectators, it's a whole story in itself, and it could happen after Sunday. It could be reality. Like it's 70 minutes away from being reality, put it that way, that Wexford are out of the top teams in the country, which for hurling enthusiasts and traditionalists, that's not acceptable, really.
Yeah, and I don't think it's anything personal with Wexford. I think if it was Kilkenny or Galway or maybe even Dublin, I think people would be reacting the same way. Maybe they'd actually be more happy if they were maybe if one of them were possibly getting relegated. I think it's just probably because of the novelty. Like you sort of had those four sides: Wexford, Dublin, Kilkenny, Galway, as your sort of front four. It'd almost be like if Kerry got promoted in the Joe McDonagh and Waterford ended up in the Joe McDonagh, like. It would just be, it's just unusual, that way. It's a bit like in the Premier League if Everton get relegated, like it's a bit unusual to see them down in the second division. It just makes it fascinating to see how they do there. But at the same time, like, yeah, obviously nothing against Wexford, in fairness there. But I suppose before we finish.
That's you saying that.
yeah.
I might have my own personal battles and work against Wexford people, so.
You've got a few hidden agendas.
Yeah. Mostly against Wexford and Kilkenny people, so.
Good stuff. Yeah, no. In fairness, Dublin and Wexford have had a few feisty rivalries now in the last couple of seasons as well. Especially last year in Wexford Park, like it was a fairly close game. Like, I think it was one or 2 points. This year, fairly close as well. So there certainly is a few rivalries between Dublin and Wexford in the last few seasons, but. In terms of player of the week and bet of the week from the football action, like, what are you thinking?
Let me think. I had something that went out of my head when I came on. I would probably, if I really wanted to make money, I would probably go, because it's so tempting me now since I've said it, that draw between Louth and Cork. It's so tempting. Like, I haven't got to look up the odds yet, but I'd say it must be some money to be earned on that. One to watch out for the weekend, player-wise. Realistically, it's probably going to be one of the Dublin lads. I would say one of the Dublin forwards, or even one of the running halfbacks, like somewhere along the line. I'm going to say possibly Mannion. I think he's just starting to really get into it, and he could be on fire at the weekend. I'm trying to think. Maybe I'd love to pick a Monaghan lad and say that they might have a great day out, and then I'll just go for Kieran Doyle, Westmeath hurlers. just an absolute hero, or Niall O'Brien. I'll take either of them. To be honest, I couldn't care less if it's Noel Connerty in goals who hits the winning free. Like, I don't care. It's just some Westmeath player. A few of them I think made the hurling team of the week last week, so I'm delighted for them, because a lot of them at Castletown, who won the county title here last season, the senior, and going into county, then totally different thing, where they're going from top tier down to fighting for scraps, really. So it was great for Johnny Birmingham and those kind of lads to get on the team of the week. So I'll go for the draw between Louth and Cork. I know I predicted Louth victory, but just the temptation of a draw in that one is just, Paddy Power might get a visit from me at some point.
Yeah, no, like I think, like I'm not much of a betting man. In fairness, I try stay away, but sometimes every now and again you do get tempted in. You do see something. And fairness, is probably not a lot this week. But then again, I did think that last week, and I wonder I haven't heard any stories anyway of anyone who put any money on Westmeath to beat Wexford. But I'd say if you did a half time, you might have broke the bookies. That'd be a bit like Leicester's Premier League win or something nuts like that. I'd say.
Yeah. I can't imagine any sane human being even considered anything. The only bet you would have put on at half time is, can Wexford win by more than 30 or 40 or something? That's the way it was taken. There's probably, as you said, bet-wise and picking out teams and stuff this weekend. It's probably less Barlow than Cork. Maybe it's potentially a tight game. There's kind of Derry, Dublin. There's a few, dare say, obvious winners. I said that during the week and that went really wrong. There's probably a few maybe more favourable victors in some of the games. Maybe like an accumulator is probably the way to go and improve your weekend a little bit with the odds there. But one of them is bound to let you down, like it always happens. Like rare that I do them, but anytime I do, it's just I'm like, why did I bother? Because Man City will lose to Southampton or something. Won the games. That's just the way it goes. It's the same. Roscommon will probably beat Dublin by 27 points down Croke Park just to ruin it all for me.
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, I think if that happened, I think there'd probably have to be a national holiday or something. I think everyone would be absolutely delighted. Other than us Dubs, of course. We'd have to hibernate for the rest of the year. But yeah, no, I think in terms of player of the week, I'd probably go Kieran Kilkenny. I think you'd expect him to have a big game against Roscommon. Like if they are gonna, I suppose, try and frustrate us and make life difficult. So probably go Kieran Kilkenny as my player of the week, or one to watch, I suppose, for the week. I suppose before we go, your own show, Loaf for Bread podcast, like where can people find that, or any of your own work if they're looking to find it?
Yeah, it's mostly Instagram, Twitter is kind of what I tend to post, and haven't recorded now in nearly a year for different reasons, moving house, and baby Tomas came along, and we're expecting number 2 in September. So, but in some ways it's been kind of nice not recording. I've kind of got to get in touch with teams around the world a little bit more. A lot of the stuff of what I do is international GA as well, and obviously the World Games coming up now in Derry. I hopefully have some big news for that in the next week or so that I'm excited about. That'll hopefully be able to. It's not finalised yet, but it'll hopefully be something I'll be able to announce soon. And I suppose I have to give a shout out to Casey Sports as well. It's bizarre to say that I'm sponsored by the same crowd as the two Johnnies, but Casey Sports are literally like down the road here. So the lads in there got in touch recently and asked could they use my design for a jersey. So I said, yeah, why not? So this is the deadly jersey that came out, and they gave me bucket hats and mugs and deadly zip-up hoodie. So it's all going grand. Commentary mostly, and with the ladies' commentary on their YouTube and the Leinster stream, and with Jerome Quinn as well. A lot of people would know Jerome from his commentary. And then anyone who wants to buy the Westmeath topic, by all means. I'm not sure why you would, unless you're from Westmeath. But yeah, they asked me to start a new weekly article in it. It's called From the 45. So it's kind of like your, standard player in the Independent writing their debate kind of article thing. And they do it every week. It's 99% GA. There might be the odd non-GA one in there, but yeah, that's pretty much it. So if anyone wants to buy the jerseys and stuff or the mugs, please go on to Casey Sports. You'll find the Loaf of Bread stuff there. The competition going on at the moment. It's actually finished Friday. It's finished Friday. They've given me a few of the jerseys to give away. So find it in the Instagram page, but it's mostly Instagram is where I tend to wander around. Go on the stories. There's a good Jersey World Cup. The Jersey World Cup 2023 is up and running, which is proven to be a big hit the last 2 years, which is why I was forced by 600 teams to do it again. So I'm having good crack doing that. And it's good promotion for a lot of teams as well. I've reading some of the comments here actually that you didn't put up on the screen that are quite interesting. I can see a few interesting ones there. Yeah, I can see what some of them maybe were several debates about referees and stuff as well.
Yeah. No, there's usually always back and forth in the comments. I just kind of let them flow, let them air it out,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, though, Aaron. Appreciate it. Good to see you again.
Yeah, no bother at all, Jason. And I suppose cheers to anyone who obviously tuned in. If you could leave a like, subscribe, make sure to check out Jason's show as well. That'd be much appreciated. And
Well
we'll
done
speak
on
to you
the
all.
4,000, actually, didn't you? You get 4,000 YouTube subscribers.
Yeah, I did
Yeah,
actually.
good on
Yeah,
you.
yeah, no,
No mean feat.
yeah. Look, I mean, it's taken a while. In fairness, just a couple of years. But we got there eventually. Anyway, we got there. So hopefully, anyway, we can keep pushing forward, and then who knows? 5,000 maybe might be on the agenda at some point. But no, like big thank you to the obviously to everyone who's followed as well, to everyone who's watched the show and everything else. Like it's without them it wouldn't be possible. So it's much appreciated. And then obviously the likes of yourself, Matthew, all the lads who usually come on. Without them as well, we wouldn't be able to continue. So no, it's great. It's great. It's great news. And definitely cause for a bit of a celebration on Friday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, here's to the next 4,000. So.